The warning was older than any living memory, and that was precisely why most of them no longer believed it. It had been repeated so many times that it had lost its sharp edges. It was told to restless younglings during long night cycles, spoken by elders who enjoyed the sound of their own caution, archived in dusty records that no one opened anymore. 7 simple words, passed down across generations like a relic no one valued enough to question. Do not approach the third planet of the yellow star. Sovun still believed it. She stood alone in the observation chamber, the quiet hum of the council ship wrapping around her like a second skin. Beyond the wide arc of glass, the galaxy stretched in endless silence, points of light scattered across a darkness so vast it made even ancient civilizations feel temporary. In the center of the chamber, a star map rotated slowly. Her star map. She had spent decades refining it, correcting errors, adding details, updating regions most of the council had long since stopped caring about. Her fingers, tipped in silver with age, rested lightly against the console as she stared at a small, unremarkable system near the edge of a quiet spiral arm. A yellow star. Ordinary in every measurable way. Except for the third planet. She had not told the council when she sent the drone. That had been deliberate. If she had raised the request formally, it would have been dismissed as a waste of resources. The warning was considered myth, not data. So she had filed the mission under a routine survey classification and sent a single observation unit into the system. It had taken 12 cycles to return. For 9 of those cycles, she had forgotten about it entirely. For the last 3, she had not been able to think about anything else. Sovun pressed a control on the armrest beside her. The chamber dimmed slightly as the drone footage came to life across the curved wall. At first, there was nothing remarkable. A distant view of the planet, blue and white, turning slowly in the void. Swirls of cloud drifted across vast oceans. Land masses spread beneath them in irregular shapes, textured with greens and browns. Beautiful in a simple, natural way. Then the drone moved closer. The surface changed. Lines appeared. Not natural formations, these were deliberate. Straight lines. Curved lines. Intersections forming grids that stretched across continents. Clusters of light began to flicker as the planet rotated into night. The dark side of the world glowed. Not faintly. Not sporadically. It burned with structured illumination, vast networks of brightness connected by thin, shining threads. The entire planet looked alive, like an ember that refused to fade. They built this, Sovun murmured, though she was alone. The footage continued. The drone adjusted its orbit, focusing on one section of the surface where activity intensified. Heat signatures flared. Movement patterns shifted. And then, the atmosphere split. A column of metal surged upward from the planet below, riding a violent tale of fire and smoke. It tore through the sky with brute force, climbing higher and higher, defying the gravity that tried to pull it back. Sovun leaned forward slightly, her breath slowing. The object did not fall. It kept going. Beyond where physics suggested it should fail. Beyond where caution would demand it stop. It reached the vacuum. And continued. The drone tracked it as it crossed the empty space between the planet and its satellite, a barren gray sphere suspended in silent orbit. The object descended. 4 landing struts extended. Dust rose as it touched the surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a section of the craft opened. 2 figures emerged. Small compared to the vast emptiness around them, clad in protective suits that reflected the distant light. They moved carefully, adjusting to the lower gravity, but there was no hesitation in their steps. No visible fear. One of them carried something. A thin pole. They drove it into the gray dust. A piece of fabric unfurled. Stripes of red, white, and blue rippled in the airless void, held in shape by an unseen structure. They stood beside it. Not long. Not dramatically. Just long enough. Then they returned to their craft and left. The footage ended. The chamber fell silent again. Sovun did not move. She had watched this 9 times. 9 times she had searched for a simpler explanation. A safer one. Something that would allow her to dismiss what she was seeing as routine, predictable, contained. She had failed every time. Because this was not about reaching a moon. It was not about technology. It was not even about capability. It was about intent. They had gone there just to prove they could. To themselves. To anyone who might be watching. "We were here," she whispered softly. "We came this far." Her gaze drifted back to the star map, to the small yellow star that now seemed far less ordinary than it had before. The old warning echoed in her mind, no longer dull, no longer softened by repetition. It felt sharp again. Relevant. Alive. "Do not approach the third planet of the yellow star." Sovun straightened slowly, her decision already made before she fully acknowledged it. The council would resist. They always did. But this time, she would not allow dismissal. Because for the first time in many years, she understood why the warning had survived. And for the first time, she was afraid it might not be enough. The council did not react the way Sovun had hoped. They reacted the way they always did. With patience. With logic. With the quiet confidence of beings who had seen too much to be easily impressed. The 7 elders sat in their curved seats, arranged in a perfect arc beneath the soft glow of the chamber lights. Their crests shimmered faintly, muted by age and experience. Outside the wide observation windows, the stars burned in indifferent silence. Sovun stood at the center and replayed the footage. No one interrupted her. No one spoke until it ended. For a moment, the only sound in the chamber was the low hum of the ship's systems. Then Elder Dorak exhaled slowly, the sound long and measured. "They use chemical propulsion," he said, almost casually. "Primitive. Inefficient. Limited." His crest dimmed slightly as he leaned back into his seat. "They cannot reach us." A few of the others shifted in agreement. Sovun had expected this. She reached into her robe and removed the archive chip. It was old, far older than anything else in the room. Its surface had faded with time, the edges softened by centuries of handling. She placed it into the reader without a word. Ancient script flickered to life across the chamber wall. The text was precise, careful, written by minds that understood the weight of what they were recording. "They do not stop," Sovun read quietly. "Not for pain. Not for loss. Not for the cold between stars." The room stilled. "They bury their dead and continue. They break their bodies and rebuild them stronger. They take poison and make medicine from it. They take disaster and turn it into instruction." Dorak's posture shifted slightly. "They do not retreat," Sovun continued. "They do not accept endings in the way other species do." She let the next line hang in the air before speaking it. "Do not let them find you." Silence followed. A deeper silence this time. Dorak's crest faded by a fraction. "That text," he said slowly, "is Kareth." "Yes. The Kareth," he repeated as if testing the word. "The most advanced civilization this quadrant has ever recorded." "Yes. The Kareth," he said again, more quietly now, "who no longer exist." Sovun did not look away. "Yes." No one spoke after that. The weight of the name alone was enough. The Kareth had been everything a civilization could aspire to be: advanced, disciplined, thoughtful. Their reach had extended across systems that others had not even known existed. Their science had reshaped entire regions of space. And then they were gone. Not diminished. Not scattered. Gone. A younger elder, Ren, leaned forward slightly, her crest flickering with uncertainty. "They were destroyed by the Vorith," she said. "Not by these humans." "That is correct," Sovun replied. Ren hesitated. "Then why?" "Because they were watching them," Sovun said. The words settled into the chamber like a slow-moving gravity. They were observing the third planet of the yellow star in the years before their own end. Studying them. Recording them. Dorak's eyes narrowed slightly. "And they left us this?" "They left a warning," Sovun said. "Not about weapons. Not about ships. Not about power." She paused. "They left a warning about something they did not understand." The council remained still. Ren's voice dropped lower. "What was it?" Sovun turned slightly, looking not at the elders now, but at the ancient text still glowing on the wall. For a moment, she considered choosing a different word. A softer one. A safer one. She did not. Stubbornness, she said. The words sounded small in the vast chamber. Too small. She shook her head slightly. No. That is not sufficient. She stepped forward. It is a kind of will that does not recognize an ending. That made several of them shift. Every species in our records, Sovan continued, reaches a point where survival requires adaptation. When faced with something too large, too powerful, too absolute, they change direction. They yield. They evolve around it. She looked at each of them in turn. That is what intelligence does. The pause. These beings do not. The words landed harder this time. They look at the thing that cannot be overcome, Sovan said quietly, and they walk toward it. No one spoke. Outside, distant stars burned without concern. Inside, something colder settled into the room. Doruk leaned forward now, his earlier dismissal gone. That is not intelligence, he said. No, Sovan agreed. It is not. Another silence stretched. Ren's crest dimmed. If that is true, she said carefully, then why have they not destroyed themselves already? Sovan did not answer immediately. Instead, she reached out and brought up a second piece of footage. Different from the first. Closer. More detailed. It showed the same species. Humans. But not reaching upward. Reaching outward. A vessel drifting in space. Damaged. Powerless. Another vessel approaching it. Human. Small compared to the distances involved. Too small to matter. And yet it came. The recording showed figures moving between the two ships. Supplies being transferred. Repairs being made. No weapons. No demands. No hesitation. They help, Sovan said softly. The council watched in silence. They risk themselves for strangers. They respond to distress signals they are not required to answer. They expend resources without expectation of return. Doruk's gaze hardened slightly. That is inefficient. Yes. That is unsustainable. Yes. That is not how civilizations endure. Sovan looked at him. And yet, she said quietly, they do. No one had an answer to that. The contradiction hung in the air, unresolved. Ren spoke again, slower this time. You are saying they are both, she said. Unstoppable and compassionate. Yes. That is not stable. No, Sovan agreed again. It is not. The chamber fell into another long silence. Because they all understood what instability meant at that scale. It meant unpredictability. And unpredictability, more than strength, was what ended civilizations. Doruk finally leaned back again, but this time there was no dismissal in the movement. Only thought. What are you proposing? He asked. Sovan did not hesitate. That we act before they do. Several crests flickered. Doruk's gaze sharpened. Explain. Sovan stepped closer to the center of the chamber. For generations we have followed the warning, she said. We have avoided them. Hidden from them. Assumed distance would be enough. She gestured toward the star map. They are already reaching beyond their world. Already testing the limits of their system. Already proving that limits do not hold them. Her voice lowered. If they continue, and everything we know suggests they will, it is only a matter of time before they begin to search further. The implications settled heavily. And when they do, Sovan said, they will not stop. No one argued that point now. Doruk's voice came quieter. So we continue to hide. Sovan shook her head. No. That single word shifted the entire room. We prepare, she said. For what? Ernest. Sovan met her gaze. For contact. That word carried weight. More than any other. Doruk's crest dimmed slightly. You would invite them? I would ensure that when they arrive, Sovan said carefully, we are not unprepared. Silence followed. Measured. The kind of silence where decisions formed slowly, heavily. Doruk closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, the impatience was gone. Replaced by something far rarer. Uncertainty. They are still primitive, he said, though there was less conviction in it now. Sovan inclined her head slightly. Yes. Doruk exhaled. But they will not remain that way. No, she said. They will not. The chamber remained still for several seconds more. Then, for the first time since the meeting began, Doruk did not argue. The object had been drifting for a very long time before anyone noticed it. It did not transmit. It did not move with purpose. It did not announce itself in any way that would have drawn attention. It simply existed, silent, cold, and easy to miss against the endless clutter of the outer system. Deep space monitoring picked it up first. A faint irregularity in motion patterns near the asteroid belt. Something small, metallic, and out of place. The automated system flagged it, logged it, and passed it along with 1,000 other minor anomalies that usually turned out to be nothing. Lieutenant Dan Calloway almost ignored it. 14 years in deep space had taught him a simple truth. Most mysteries weren't mysteries at all. They were sensor ghosts, drifting debris, or equipment that had wandered farther than expected. The universe liked to look interesting. It rarely was. Still, something about the report kept pulling his attention back. Non-terrestrial alloy composition. No power signature. No identifiable origin. Small enough to investigate. He read it 3 times during the 2-day transit. By the 3rd reading, he stopped hoping for something interesting and started expecting something different. The ship approached slowly. Commander Laura Hale insisted on that. She stood on the bridge with her usual stillness, one finger tapping lightly against the console as she watched the object grow larger on the forward display. "We treat this like a recovery operation," she said. "Nothing more, nothing less." No one argued. The crew had worked together long enough to understand her tone. Calm meant focused. Focused meant careful. Careful meant they were already taking this seriously. The object came into full view on the 2nd day. It was small. Smaller than expected. Roughly 4 meters in length, shaped like something organic that had been pressed into form. Smooth in some places, dented and scarred in others. Its surface was pitted from micrometeorite impacts, worn by time in a way that suggested it had not been placed here recently. Dan circled it twice during the EVA, his suit thrusters firing in short controlled bursts. It didn't match anything in the human database. Not military. Not civilian. Not experimental. It wasn't just unfamiliar. It was wrong. "Found the hatch," he said finally. It took him a second to process what he was seeing. "Commander, it's open." The pause. "Define open," Hale replied. "Not damaged. Not forced. Just open." She joined him a moment later, drifting beside him in the quiet vacuum. They both looked at it. The hatch was intact. The seal was intact. There were no signs of impact or failure. Someone had opened it from the inside. And left it that way. Hale didn't speak immediately. She didn't need to. "Going in," she said at last. The interior was smaller than expected. Dan's helmet light swept across surfaces that had once been soft, now hardened by time and cold. Controls lined one side of the chamber, complex, unfamiliar, built for hands that were not human. There was only one seat, shaped for a body with a different structure. Wider at the base. Narrower at the top. Indented in ways that suggested more than 2 arms. Dan moved slowly, carefully. His training told him to catalog, observe, and report. But something else, something quieter, told him to pay attention. Because this did not feel like debris. It felt like a message. His light reached the far wall. And stopped. He didn't move for a long moment. "Commander," he said, his voice lower now. "You need to see this." Hale moved beside him. Her light joined his. Together, they illuminated the wall. It was covered. Every inch of it. Symbols carved directly into the metal. Not printed. Not etched by machine. Carved. Line by line. Stroke by stroke. The cuts were uneven in places, deeper in others, as if made over a long period of time by someone who had no tools designed for the task. Someone who had time. And something very important to say. Neither of them spoke. There was something deeply human about the way it had been done. Even though it wasn't human at all. "Photograph everything," Hale said quietly. Every centimeter. Back aboard the ship, the waiting was worse. The object had been silent. But now it wasn't. Now it was speaking. They just didn't understand the language yet. The ship's AI worked first. 4.5 hours of pattern analysis, structure mapping, and probability modeling. It wasn't designed for true alien linguistics. No system was, but mathematics was universal enough to create a foothold. It returned a result. Moderate confidence. Which meant, possibly correct. Which also meant, possibly very wrong. Dr. Priya Nair took over from there. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She didn't answer messages. She sat with the data, cross-referencing patterns, rebuilding context, checking and rechecking every assumption. When she finally called the crew together, it was late. Too late for routine. Just early enough for something important. She stood at the front of the room, tablet in hand. There were shadows under her eyes. Some of it is damaged, she said. Incomplete. But the core message is consistent. She looked at each of them. I'm going to read it. Let me finish. No one interrupted. She took a breath. And began. We thought we were alone near the yellow star system. A stillness settled over the room. We were wrong. Dan felt his focus narrow. The beings on the third planet detected us before we detected them. A glance passed between crew members. They sent a transmission. We did not respond. Our protocol was observation only. Priya's voice remained steady. They sent another transmission. And another. The pause. On the 15th attempt, they did not send a transmission. She looked down briefly. They sent a vessel. No one moved. Not a weapon. A vessel with a living crew. Dan's hands tightened slightly against the edge of the table. They came out into the dark to find us, she continued. And they were not afraid. Silence. Heavy now. We observed them for one full orbital cycle before they found a way to communicate. They were patient. They sent mathematics. Then images. Then sound. Priya swallowed once. When one of our crew became ill, they noticed the change in our behavior. Another pause. They sent medicine. Dan blinked. They did not ask if we needed it. They simply sent it. The room felt smaller. When our supplies ran low, they sent food. No one looked at anyone else. When one of our crew died, Priya's voice softened slightly. They observed our morning ritual. A longer pause this time. They sent a message. She looked up. It took 3 days to translate. No one breathed. It said. Her voice dropped just enough to make every word land. We are sorry for your loss. Dan felt something shift in his chest. We know you are far from home. The room blurred slightly at the edges. You are not alone. Silence. Complete. Total. Priya lowered the tablet slowly. No one spoke. No one needed to. 3,000 years ago, humanity had barely begun to understand its own world. And yet, out here, in the dark, someone had met them, and remembered them, and left a message behind, waiting for whoever came next. Dan finally looked up. His voice was quiet, but certain. They left it on purpose. Priya nodded once. Yes. Another silence. Then Dan said the thing none of them could avoid. We have to answer it. Commander Hale looked at him, held his gaze, and nodded. Yes, she said. We do. The archive was older than most civilizations that used it. It did not belong to any one species. It had grown slowly, piece by piece, across thousands of years, records layered over records, voices added to voices, until it became something vast and patient and impossible to fully understand. It remembered everything. Trades, conflicts, discoveries, failures, and sometimes, it remembered things no one had meant to leave behind. Sovan sat alone in the access alcove, the light dimmed to a soft glow that reflected faintly against the curved walls. A cup of heated nutrient liquid rested untouched beside her, long since gone cold. She had been reading for 6 hours. She had not noticed the time passing. At first, there had been very little. No official entries. No formal contact. No recognition in the primary index. The beings from the third planet of the yellow star did not yet exist in the archive as a species. But they were there. In the margins. In the places people did not expect anyone to look. She found the first reference in a merchant log. It was recent by archive standards, only 43 years old. A Draenei trader operating along a minor cargo route near the outer edges of uncharted space. The entry was routine until it wasn't. Catastrophic engine failure. No nearby support. Life support failing. A distress beacon sent into empty space. Sovan read the next line twice. A human vessel responded. Not a registered rescue unit. Not an official authority. Just nearby. The trader had expected negotiation. Terms. Delay. Instead, they arrived faster than his calculations allowed. They took his crew aboard. Fed them. Spent 3 days repairing his ship using their own supplies. And when he offered payment, they refused. Sovan leaned back slightly, her crest dimming in thought. The final line of the entry lingered in her mind. I did not know what to do with this. She understood that. Because there was no framework for it. No model that explained why a species would expend resources for no gain. She moved on. The second record came from a military source. Older. 61 years. The Thun were not a species known for uncertainty. Their reports were direct, efficient, stripped of unnecessary interpretation. This one was different. A border encounter. A Thun patrol vessel drifting into disputed territory. A human ship intercepting. The expected outcome was obvious. Challenge. Escalation. Conflict. Instead, the human captain opened communication and asked a question. Is everyone aboard your vessel safe? Sovan paused. Read the line again. Even through translation, the meaning held. The Thun commander had responded with a threat. Standard protocol. Predictable. The human vessel did not fire. Did not retreat. Did not escalate. It remained. Still. Present. And then. The human captain responded. I heard you. I just don't think you mean it. So I'm going to stay here until we find a better way to talk about this. Sovan closed her eyes briefly. That was not strategy. That was not doctrine. That was something else. The report ended without conflict. The Thun vessel withdrew. The human ship did not pursue. The final note from the Thun commander was concise. Behavior cannot be predicted. Further study recommended. Sovan exhaled slowly. Unpredictable. She continued deeper. Past recent records. Past structured logs. Into older data where the translations grew uncertain and the language shifted into something more deliberate. More careful. She was looking for the Kareth. She found them. The records were extensive. Fragments of something that had once been vast. The Kareth had been extraordinary. Advanced beyond comparison. Their reach had extended across regions others had not yet discovered. Their science had shaped entire sectors. Their philosophy had been measured, thoughtful, deeply aware. They had not just observed the galaxy. They had understood it. And they had observed the humans. From a distance. For a very long time. Sovan slowed her reading. These were not surface-level observations. These were studies. Patient. Carefully written by minds that knew they might not always be there to explain themselves. One name appeared repeatedly. Farith. Kareth scientist. His work was precise. He had tracked human development across centuries. From primitive beginnings. To structured societies. To something more complex. Sovan focused on one section. Read it slowly. Every species we have studied trends toward one of two outcomes as it develops. She leaned forward slightly. Cooperation at the cost of competition. Or dominance at the cost of empathy. She nodded faintly. That was consistent with Velhari understanding. It was how civilizations stabilized. Or destroyed themselves. She continued. The species of the third planet does not follow this pattern. Sovan stopped. Read it again. More slowly this time. Both tendencies exist simultaneously. Neither diminishes the other. Her crest dimmed slightly. They compete fiercely, the text continued, and then share the results of that competition. They wage war, it said, and then build systems to care for the wounded on both sides. They fear death, the next line read, and yet move toward danger at a frequency that defies survival models. Sovun sat back. The contradiction again. Always the contradiction. Faratha's next conclusion was written with unusual care. We attempted to classify them within existing frameworks. A pause in the text. As expected, this failed. Sovun almost smiled at that. They are not a paradox, the record continued. They are not an error. They are something our models did not predict, because no species has survived long enough in this configuration to reach this stage. Sovun stared at that line for a long time, because that was the part that mattered. Not what they were, but the fact that they still existed, that they had not collapsed under their own contradictions. Faratha's final observation was quieter. If they survive long enough, they will become something the galaxy has not seen before. Sovun felt a slow, unfamiliar tension settle in her chest. We do not know what that will be. The pause. We find that we hope to see it. She did not expect that. From the Kareth, toward something unknown. She continued to the final record. It was shorter, written later, the structure less precise, less academic, more personal. We cannot help them. Sovun's eyes moved carefully across the text. We cannot help anyone now. The implication was clear. This was near the end. The Kareth were already falling. But we watched them. For a long time. Another pause. We wanted it recorded. Sovun leaned closer. That they are worth watching. Her breath slowed. They are worth hoping for. The last lines were faint. Time had not been kind to the data. But they remained readable. We hope they survive. We hope they reach the stars. We hope, when they do, they find someone worth finding. Silence filled the alcove. Sovun closed the archive slowly. Her hands rested still in her lap. For a long time, she did not move. The Kareth had hoped. 11,000 years ago. They had written that hope into the record. And then they had disappeared. Gone. Leaving nothing but fragments. And a belief in something that had not yet happened. Sovun stood. Moved back toward her station. The galaxy outside had not changed. But something inside her understanding had. The humans had survived. They were no longer a distant possibility. They were real. They were building. They were moving. She opened a new document. Began to write. Not quickly. Not carelessly. Every word mattered. Every detail. When she finished, she read it once. Made 2 small corrections. And submitted it to the council. The request was simple. Direct. Final. Raise contact protocols from distant observation to active preparation. The decision came the next cycle. Unanimous. Even Doruk voted yes. For the first time in recorded Velhari history. They were not waiting to be found. They were preparing to meet what was coming. The chamber was not designed for uncertainty. Everything about it reflected control, clean lines, measured lighting, acoustics tuned so that every voice carried evenly without effort. The Velhari did not build spaces like this unless the outcome mattered. And this one did. Sovun stood at the center platform, alone. Not because she had to be. Because it mattered that she was. The council ring rose around her in a slow arc, each member seated in silence, their presence marked only by the faint shifts of color along their crests. No movement wasted. No reaction given freely. At the highest point sat Doruk. Old even by Velhari standards. Unyielding by reputation. He had not spoken since the session began. That, more than anything, held the room in place. Sovun did not rush. She let the silence settle fully before she began. We have confirmed independent records from 3 separate civilizations, she said. Each encounter consistent in behavioral pattern. Her voice was steady, measured. We have archival evidence from the Kareth indicating long-term observation with similar conclusions. A slight shift in the chamber. Not surprise. Recognition. The Kareth still carried weight. Even now. They identified the same anomaly, Sovun continued. A species that maintains both cooperative and competitive extremes without collapse. Doric's crest flickered once. Subtle, but not missed. Sovun continued. They predicted instability, she said. Instead, the species stabilized. She let that sit for a moment, then expanded. Now there was movement. Controlled, but real. They are no longer isolated to their origin system, Sovun said. They are active within multiple regions. Their technological development curve suggests continued acceleration. She paused, then added, They are approaching us. Silence. Not empty. Tight. Doric finally spoke. Approaching, he repeated. His voice was low, even. Or expanding in all directions? Sovun met his gaze. Both. A longer silence followed. Doric considered that. Intent. The question was simple. The answer was not. Sovun did not pretend otherwise. Unclear, she said. Their behavior does not conform to established predictive models. A faint ripple of color moved through the council. Discomfort. Not fear. Not yet. Then we assume risk, Doric said. It was not a question. Sovun inclined her head slightly. Yes. Doric leaned back. Define it. Sovun had expected that. She brought up the first record. The Draenei trader. Displayed it without commentary. Let the facts stand. Distress. Failure. Human response. Assistance given. Compensation refused. She let it linger. Then replaced it with the Thuan report. Border tension. Threat issued. Human response. De-escalation. Persistence. No conflict. Finally, she displayed the Kareth analysis. Only the key lines. Carefully chosen. They compete and then share. They wage war and then care for the wounded. They move toward danger, despite understanding it. Sovun let the chamber absorb it. Then she spoke. The risk is not that they are hostile. The pause. It is that they are not predictable. Doric's crest dimmed slightly. Unpredictability can be contained, he said. Sovun did not look away. Not when it scales. That landed. She continued before he could respond. They do not behave within expected cost-benefit structures, she said. They act without immediate gain. They absorb loss without strategic compensation. Doric's eyes narrowed slightly. Unsustainable. Sovun shook her head once. That is what the Kareth believed. A small shift in the chamber again. They were wrong. Silence returned. He studied her now. More carefully. You are proposing contact, Doric said. Preparation for contact, Sovun corrected. Not observation. No. Not avoidance. No. Doric leaned forward slightly. Then you are proposing we step outside established protocol. Sovun did not hesitate. Yes. That should have ended it. In any other chamber. At any other time. But the council did not respond immediately. Because this was not just a procedural deviation. This was something else. Doric spoke again. Slower now. Why? Now why now? Not why them. But. Sovun took a breath. Not because she needed it. Because the answer mattered. Because every record we have, she said carefully, from every species that has encountered them. She paused. Chose the words. Ends the same way. No one moved. No one interrupted. They expect conflict, she said. They prepare for loss. They assume exploitation. A slight tightening in her voice. And then, they are wrong. The chamber held that. All of it. Sovun's next words were quieter. But they carried farther. They are helped. They are protected. They are seen. Doric's gaze did not waver. By a species that does not know them, he said. Yes. Without reason. Yes. Without guarantee. Sovun held his gaze. Yes. Another silence. Longer now. Deeper. Doric leaned back again. This time, there was something different in the motion. Less resistance. More consideration. The Kareth hoped for them, he said. Sovun nodded. Yes. They were wrong before. The beat. They are gone now. Sovun did not argue. They are. Doruk looked down briefly. Then back up. And you believe they were right this time? Sovun did not soften the answer. Yes. The chamber waited. Because this was the moment. The point where hesitation could still become refusal. Doruk exhaled slowly. Then we proceed, he said. A shift moved through the council. Subtle, but undeniable. Preparation begins immediately, he continued. Protocols revised. Risk structures updated. He paused, then added, we will meet them. Sovun felt something in her chest loosen. Not relief. Something closer to alignment. Doruk's final words settled over the chamber. Before they arrive here on their own terms. The session ended without ceremony. It did not need one. Decisions like this did not require acknowledgement. They required action. Sovun exited the chamber into a corridor that suddenly felt different. Not quieter. Not louder. But moving. Purpose had a way of doing that. Her console activated as she approached. Priority message. Incoming. Origin, outer relay network. Timestamp, immediate. She opened it. Read the first line. And stopped walking. The message was short. Compressed for speed. Minimal translation required. But the meaning was clear. Unidentified vessel has entered monitored space. Her focus sharpened. The next line appeared. Trajectory analysis complete. A brief pause. Course intersects Velhari territory. Sovun felt her pulse steady. Not faster. Sharper. She read the final line. And this time, she did not move at all. Vessel origin matches archived human signatures. Silence settled around her. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one wasn't controlled. It wasn't measured. It was alive. They had not just decided to prepare for contact. Contact had already begun.